Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. The presentation today is about the relevance of WHO Framework Convention for Tobacco Control for waterpipe tobacco control policies in light decisions of the 8th Conference of Parties meeting. The speakers will be Dr. Rima Naqash and Dr. Tibor Szilagyi. Before we start, we're gonna go through a little bit of technicalities. So upon starting, all the presenters are muted automatically, except for the presenters. So if you want to ask a question, you can use the raise your hand button option on the right. So we can see that you have a question and we can unmute you so you can ask a question. Or you can type in your question by using the question panel on the right. And we can see your questions and then we can ask for the presenter. So today we're going to talk about to guide the parties on how to apply WHO Framework Convention for Tobacco Control articles for controlling waterpipe tobacco and its use. And the second objective is to inform parties about the decision of the 8th Conference of Parties meeting that are the most relevant for waterpipe tobacco control. So we have two speakers with us today, Dr. Rima Naqash and Dr. Tibor Szilagyi. And they will introduce themselves in a bit. Dr. Rima Naqash.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar. My name is Rima Naqash. I'm an associate professor at the Health Promotion and Community Health Department at the Faculty of Health Sciences. I co-direct the Waterpipe Tobacco Smoking Knowledge Hub with Dr. Ghazi Azatari, and I will be doing the first presentation today, which is basically setting the stage and providing information about waterpipe tobacco use and current regulations and the state of regulation with regards to the FCTC.
Dr. Tibor.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tibor Szilagyi. I'm a medical doctor myself, and I work with the Convention Secretariat in Switzerland in Geneva for 10 years now, and currently I am the team leader for reporting and knowledge management in the Convention Secretariat.
Okay, so waterpipe tobacco smoking is known for under different names, either shisha, nargile, argile, hookah, hubblebub, or goza, and potentially in the section question and answers towards the end, there are other names in your regions or countries that this waterpipe tobacco smoking device is called. We would really be interested to hear about. If it has different designs and it comes in different shapes and forms, and this is an important aspect relevant to regulation, which we will touch upon. There are a lot of misconceptions about the safety, initially as a result of very little information that we had about it, but as more and more evidence is built, still many misconceptions that we find repeated by users and non-users that we find in the literature. And it's used particularly in the Eastern Mediterranean region, but also you'll see that there's rising use worldwide. It's an issue not only for the region anymore, it's an issue for many countries in the world, and the rise is also among youth and can be noticed among youth as a way to initiate nicotine addiction, so it's very concerning. Now, what are the factors that have contributed to increased use and prevalence? The introduction of flavored tobacco, which in fact reduces the harshness of tobacco use and the experience becomes more pleasant for users. The overall perception that it's a healthier alternative mode of tobacco smoking, so often a healthier alternative to cigarette use. It's also affordable. There are devices that are making it, and products and accessories that are making it more accessible and easy to use, such as quick lit charcoal. With charcoal, the usual charcoal that usually is used by the waterpipe is the traditional form of charcoal, but with more alternative and new products, it's become more easy to use. Overall, it's advertised in social media and by the tourism industry or the hospitality sector as very glamorous, and it's given a very positive image, an acceptable image. There's social acceptance and worldwide use and spread and proliferation among Waterpipe cafes, not only in the Eastern Mediterranean region, but worldwide, and in the US, mostly called hookah bars. There is a lack of Waterpipe specific policies and regulations, and this is what we would like to focus on, and what needs the evidence that needs to be built and promoted at country level and among the scientific community. And it's sort of immigrated with their immigration patterns from countries with high prevalence of use to low prevalence countries. So it's spread to other countries with it being taken by people and made more socially available and acceptable, and used as a way to basically for the hospitality sector to increase their revenue. Recently, a systematic review that has been published by Jawad et al. Has looked at prevalence and trends of Waterpipe tobacco smoking, and reported on showed that 129 studies reported 355 prevalence estimates of Waterpipe tobacco smoking among 68 countries. So there are 68 countries in the systematic review that report on Waterpipe tobacco smoking. Among adults, the highest prevalence estimates were seen in the Eastern Mediterranean region, of course, because of the data that's available, and among youth, also the highest prevalence estimates were seen in both the Eastern Mediterranean region and the European region, which is a notable piece of information. The highest prevalence estimates for Lebanese youth has been 37.2 during the past 30 years in terms of ever use. 65% of Lebanese youth and Lebanese university students had ever used Waterpipe tobacco smoking, and the systematic review does also provide prevalences from those 68 countries. You can see that the reference for the publication below, and it's an open access journal, so you can go if you are curious to see prevalence rates among other countries globally. In terms of current Waterpipe tobacco smoking among youth, now of course I'm reporting here about countries that have the WHO Global Youth Tobacco Survey conducted, which is a school-based survey that's conducted regularly in those countries that you can see on the graphs, and there are changes. It's been conducted in 2008, and it's been conducted in consecutive years up to 2014. But what is notable, and the message to take out from this slide, is the gender difference. There is a high percent of boys. We're talking 13 to 15-year-olds. So the Global Youth Tobacco Survey focuses on 13 to 15-year-olds. We can see that the high prevalence of boy smoking, but we also can see a high prevalence of girl smoking. This is a gender difference that in cigarettes is high, but when you see that boys and girls actually are smoking Waterpipe at same levels, this is of main concern. Today's Waterpipe tobacco product, what are the key facts? What we know and that science has provided us through a consecutive and increasing number of publications you can find in the literature is that it's toxic and it's carcinogenic. It does have many of the same carcinogenic toxicants that are found also in cigarettes. It's been shown to be addictive. It's attractive and is available in the market and popularized, and that has contributed to, in many countries, evading regulations. So even in countries that have very strict tobacco control policies, that also can cover technically the Waterpipe, the attractiveness of this product has resulted in a situation where regulations are evaded even when they're set in place. What we know about price is that in many contexts it's very affordable, and the tobacco itself on average costs between 25 to 30 US cents per 10 per 10 grams. This is information reflected from products that are found in Lebanon. And the strong link to the entertainment industry and to the hospitality sector, because we have to remember that cafes and restaurants have found this as a product that actually makes money. I mean, if they buy the tobacco leaves for very little money, but they are able to sell it for much more, and there is a profit margin here that they are benefiting it on the expense of consumers. With regards to specifically warning labels, we know that there's limited compliance of warning labels on packages as a tobacco control policy on Waterpipe, that in general the labels are either small, are not exposed properly. Even if the labels are available on the packages of the tobacco, the Waterpipe tobacco smoking phenomena actually means that there are results in the fact that there are other accessories that the smoker is exposed to, like the actual Waterpipe device and the bowls, or even the charcoal or the lighting material, and those themselves don't have warnings on them. And very often we find that there is even misleading information with regards to emission and content on the product. Article 11, which requires discusses packaging and labeling of tobacco products, actually does have specific guidelines produced with regards to how warning labels should be placed on tobacco products. They should be rotating, they should be pictures, as those have been shown to be more effective. They should be large. Those specifics that are outlined by Article 11 also need to be translated to Waterpipe, and the specificities on how to implement those health warnings on Waterpipe tobacco products need to be better understood and better discussed. Now, as countries that have implemented health warning labels on Waterpipe products, we have actually experience of successful best practices that have been reported, where Turkey, for example, in 2012 has extended warning label practices not only on the tobacco, but also on the actual Waterpipe device. We know that certain countries are adopting more better labeling standards, with specific focusing on the Waterpipe tobacco produced and entering the country, requiring larger warnings, thinking about more pictorial warnings. The EU in 2014 has its product directive, which requires Waterpipe tobacco products to carry health warnings with a picture. And countries like Egypt and Lebanon, Egypt has had health warning labels on Waterpipe tobacco products, and Lebanon has developed textual warnings as of March 2012. So there is a momentum to move to advocate for stronger regulations with regards to health warning labels on Waterpipe tobacco products. At the same time, the question is specific to health warning labels is why do you need health warning labels? Because health warning labels, and for all of us that are familiar with all the evidence that has accumulated on cigarette health warnings, they do identify risks. And so for Waterpipe tobacco smoking, this is very important, because as I mentioned earlier, there are misconceptions that this smoking is less harmful than cigarettes, so users need to be alerted to this. They are an effective policy tool to control Waterpipe smoking, and there are currently many evaluations by researchers conducted that are reflecting and trying to test the effectiveness of health warning labels. Health warning labels are the responsibility of the producer and the importer, so they are in a way a cheap intervention and a regulation that can be imposed by governments on importers and producers. And Waterpipe can be smoked at home or in cafes and restaurants. So smokers, as I mentioned earlier, are usually not exposed to the tobacco packaging. So those that actually smoke in the coffee shops and restaurants, which is usually the usual place that one of the usual places that smokers use Waterpipe, they wouldn't see the tobacco package. So they need to see health warning labels in different ways, in different formats. I'll be showing different examples of products with what we see in the market with current practices in labeling and regulations. So there are textual warnings. There are products that have very small warnings with as I explained earlier, misconceptions. So some of them refer to percentages of nicotine and tar that are not reflective of the actual product. The very small labels that are not specific to the product itself. So you can see at the bottom, the health warning is mentioning that smoking in general and is not referring to Waterpipe. These are other examples of textual health warnings found on Waterpipe tobacco packages. This is an example of what the EU has suggested in its latest directive to label Waterpipe tobacco packages where shape, color, and number will identify flavors rather than having flavors mentioned on the boxes, again because flavoring actually has the flavors of Waterpipe tobacco product are the attractive component of this product that has contributed to increasing its use, particularly among youth. And these are other examples. These examples are actually from Egypt. If you look at the top right example, it also shows how the brands are marketed in a way to attract. I mean, it says here that this is made in Italy and that it's produced according to EU health and food standards. We don't know what those standards are, so a lot of marketing misconceptions and labeling. And then more recently, of course, as we know that innovations in the way that this product is being used is that there's also tobacco available in the market with different flavors that you can actually mix and develop your own intensity of flavoring or even your own flavor. And this is important here to realize that what this poses in terms of challenges on regulations, big challenges on regulation for the user, regulation in terms of what sort of health warning can you require in size and picture on this. This is an example of a health warning on a non-flavored tobacco package, Ajami Waterpipe tobacco from Iran. Again, other examples of various labels. And what's important is that as a result of this challenge that Waterpipe tobacco use poses on regulation, there's a proposed regulatory framework that actually focuses on and guides researchers on the different aspects that need to be more carefully examined to understand regulation with regards to where do you regulate at the level of the Waterpipe venue, so at the level of the cafe or the restaurant. Do you need to regulate marketing as you regulate marketing of cigarette tobacco products? This is also an aspect that needs to be studied. And then highlights the bottom three rectangles highlights the device, the tobacco itself, and the charcoal, and the different issues that need to be targeted or considered when thinking about a regulatory framework for Waterpipe. So because of that, many research studies have looked at what are the, for example, the study was looking at what is the best or where is the best place to place a health warning on a tobacco, on a Waterpipe tobacco device. So as you can see, there are many places and options to place a health warning, and this is very relevant for regulation, because at the end of the day, what you want to require in the regulation is that the health warning is placed in the most effective place for the user to see it and for it to be effective for the user. And these are, again, examples of different studies that have suggested or proposed Waterpipe-specific health warnings, referring to the Waterpipe specifically rather than general health warnings related to smoking. And this is very important in terms of effectiveness of health messages. There's a publication on the effectiveness of health warnings specific among college students. And then looking at, okay, so what are alternative places to warn about Waterpipe? Is it possibly on the menu? And then if it's on the menu, what sorts of arrangements and different choices and what are the implications for product regulation with regards to, you know, how do you vary and where do you require the health warnings, specifically with regard to the fact that how affordable it is. In terms of global regulatory practices, there is good documentation by the World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, published specifically to inform the Conference of Parties on best practices or current practices in regulation, and an overview of countries in the EMRO, Euro, and in all countries, WHO regions, summarized in those reports. The links are in the presentation. We see, I've highlighted just the yellow to show that the discrepancy in regulation with regards to Waterpipe specific health warnings. So all those countries might have, some might have very good tobacco control policy frameworks applied, but when we come and look specifically how tailored they are for Waterpipe tobacco smoking, this is the general issue that we find specific when we're talking about regulation with regards to health warnings. So this covers the Afro and WEPRO region. Obviously, we are dealing with a product that requires regulation and immediate action. So how to go about it and what are the actions that need to be taken? The WHO FCTC Empower does provide a framework that will be very helpful to guide regulation. Targets for product regulation are different. So there are the ingredients, which are not only tobacco leaves in this, the flavorings and the additives and all the heavy metals that go into the tobacco product. Also, product regulation can be at the level of the emissions that come out from the Waterpipe tobacco smoking, which is very relevant for smoke-free places. Addictiveness and dependence, how attractive the product is, regulation of the product itself and its design features, and the proliferation of a lot of innovations which are making it even figuring out what the best and most attractive way is it to be marketed is also a target for product regulation. A very good and the best resource to date on health effects, research needs, and recommended actions for regulators is the advisory note, the World Health Organization advisory note, the second edition. There is an edition that was published 10 years ago. Then this is the most updated one, and it's a good one place to go to for information about what you want to find on Waterpipe in terms of up-to-date health effects and researches, but also what are the policy recommendations, right? So there are WHO FCTC article, and then there are specific policy recommendations that come under each of the articles that are specific for Waterpipe. So I will not go through article by article. I talked specifically in relation to the more detailed in relation to health warnings. But even, for example for Article 5.3, which is a very important article in the Framework Convention, which is specific on protection from vested commercial interests. The policy recommendations say that international exhibitions which have been held recently, and this is actually has been documented in research manuscripts, has been shown that those exhibitions actually promote Waterpipe tobacco products and accessories, and that transparency should be required from Waterpipe tobacco and accessory companies that are advocating for and against legislation and regulation, both directly and through third parties. So there is also a concern on learning more and understanding more who is the Waterpipe tobacco industry and what are their roles, the roles that they play in the production and distribution and sale of Waterpipe, in order to be vigilant and aware when discussing Waterpipe specific tobacco control policies that we are protecting and that we are applying Article 5.3, and that no commercial interests or no commercial entities are involved in setting regulation in relation to waterpipe tobacco and waterpipe tobacco policy. Again, the policy recommendations touch on advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. They touch on the need to raise education and awareness about waterpipe tobacco smoking, and specifically more in relation to illicit trade in tobacco products. More recently, we had a workshop, the Knowledge Hub had a workshop on waterpipe tobacco policy regulation, where we had participants from Turkey that talked about how the majority of waterpipe tobacco in Turkey is actually illegal tobacco. So the need to also monitor waterpipe tobacco and prohibit illicit trade of waterpipe tobacco is is of concern, and is an article Article 15 in the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. There are suggested actions for regulators, more specifically, which will be helpful for audiences or attendees who are more on the more regulators. For example, if we talk about Article 8, which is protection from secondhand smoke, waterpipe cafes or lounges must not be exempt from clean indoor air laws. There are many countries that have clean indoor air laws that have been compromised because the industry, the waterpipe industry, the hospitality sector, and their allies have found loopholes where they've actually found ways to make exceptions for waterpipe tobacco smoking, whereas we know, and science has showed us, that secondhand smoke from waterpipe tobacco smoking is as harmful as secondhand smoke from cigarette smoking. So Article 8 needs to apply across the board, regardless if we're talking about waterpipe or any other sort of tobacco smoking or smoking device. I urge you to look at in more detail through and look through the advisory note that actually highlights the different suggestions for regulators with specific detail in relation to waterpipe. So this is the end of my presentation. I invite you to the Knowledge Hub, which has different platforms, social media platforms, and the website. And please feel free to communicate with me if you have any questions in relation to waterpipe tobacco smoking. My email is actually not on the slide, but it's rn06@aub.edu.lb. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rima. We now move to Tibor. Tibor, can you please let us know once you are able to upload your slides?
Yes, here they are. Can you see them?
Not yet.
And well,
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you, Rima, for this excellent overview of policies, successes, and challenges in implementation of waterpipe-specific policies. And as you correctly indicated in your tables, that all articles to the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control should be equally applicable and applied to waterpipe tobacco products as to any other traditional or new tobacco products. So this is where I would like to continue, and I would like to share with you some information about the deliberations and outcomes of the 8th session of the Conference of the Parties. Of course, I will not be able to present all decisions of the Conference of the Parties because there are more than 20 of them. I tried to pick and choose those ones that are the most relevant to this topic, that are the most relevant to waterpipe tobacco use, that could be used by the parties when as guidance when promoting or upgrading their waterpipe tobacco control policies. So first, I would like to inform you that the 8th session of the Conference of the Parties, the governing body of the convention, took place in October this year in Geneva, in Switzerland, and the slogan of the conference was to protect present and future generations from the harmful effects of tobacco use. And it specifically looked at environmental and tobacco control issues. So at the Conference of the Parties to the convention, parties are those countries that have ratified the convention. They always look into the latest progress in implementation of the convention. And this progress is provided to them by the Convention Secretariat, which, together with its partners, analyzes the information that it receives from the parties to the convention every second year through the reporting instrument of the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. And the Secretariat, which I'm representing, we are preparing global progress reports every second year. And these global progress reports are key in promoting stronger implementation of the convention, as they describe the progress made globally in implementation of the convention, as they can be used by the Conference of the Parties to identify priorities and areas where parties might need more assistance in the implementation work. And the Conference of the Parties can use the Global Progress Report and the information therein to guide its decisions. And as part of the reporting instrument, we are also looking at the spread of new and emerging tobacco products, including Waterpipe tobacco use among the different parties. So there are questions in the reporting instrument related to Waterpipe tobacco use, and this information is analyzed and published every second year as part of the Global Progress Report. So I would like to encourage you to visit the website of the FCTC and search for the latest Global Progress Report to see what parties reported to us in terms of implementation of the different articles to the convention, including the prevalence and policies related to Waterpipe, smokeless tobacco, and the new tobacco products, including electronic cigarettes. And hopefully we will be able to also report on information concerning electronic shisha, which is in the use already in many countries. So after I highlighted what kind of information the Conference of the Parties can use to guide its decisions, I would like now to highlight and go to present you a few decisions of the Conference of the Parties 8th session that I felt are most relevant to the case of Waterpipe. And as Rima has already presented, how important is addressing Article 5.3 of the Convention to prevent tobacco industry interference with policy making. And to be able to do so, we need to maximize transparency of the delegations of the parties to the Conference of the Parties sessions. And this decision of the COP aims to address this particular issue. Why was there a need for this decision? We have seen in the past years that tobacco industries, including state tobacco monopolies and tobacco industries that are partly owned by the governments of the respective governments, they found their ways into the delegations that attended the Conference of the Parties sessions. So it was, in fact, a necessity and an urgency for the Conference of the Parties to address this issue. And this session of the COP has done its work and adopted a decision on maximizing transparency of delegations. Of course, this decision relates to implementation of Article 5.3. And if we are looking at the guidelines for implementation for Article 5.3, we have two recommendations, and I would specifically flag recommendation 4.8, which refers to the fact that within a particular country, the tobacco industry should not have a seat at the negotiating table when tobacco control policies are being developed and negotiated. And recommendation 8.3, which calls upon parties not to nominate representatives of the tobacco industry in their delegations to the conferences of the parties and other subsidiary bodies that are established by the Conference of the Parties. This way, if parties do so, then this would mean that they implement Article 5.3 in a very advanced and comprehensive way. So what does this maximizing transparency decision require? The decision requires that all delegates, be those delegates by the non-governmental organizations, intergovernmental organizations, the media and the public, should complete a declaration of interest form declaring whether they have any interests in the tobacco industries. And if such a declaration is made and the Bureau has the opportunity to exclude those delegates that reported a conflict of interest. What happens to the parties to the convention? The parties to the convention during the registration process for the Conference of the Parties should submit from the next Conference of the Parties on a statement whether they have taken into account Article 5.3 of the Convention, the guidelines for Article 5.3 of the Convention, the recommendations which I just mentioned, whether they have taken all these into account, and whether they are able to report that their delegations are free from tobacco industry interests, presence, interference. So from the next session of the Conference of the Parties in 2020, parties to the Convention will need to make such declarations during the registration process, during registering their delegates for the Conference of the Parties session. So I would say this is a landmark decision, which for the first time in the history of the Conference of the Parties established measures to check delegations and to ensure that the Conference of the Parties is less and less tobacco industry free, and it has less influence of the tobacco industries in its sessions. The next decision which I would like to highlight refers to the global strategy to accelerate tobacco control. This strategy is the first one which the Conference of the Parties adopted that is expected to guide the implementation of the Convention by its parties and by the other stakeholders that might have a role in the implementation of the Convention. So the strategy is not only for the parties, is not only for the Convention Secretariat, it's for all stakeholders that could contribute in a way or the other in the implementation of the Convention at national, regional, and global levels. So the strategic document contains a series of objectives, and it also contains a series of indicators that could be used to measure the impact of this first global strategy of the FCTC. And this global strategy, what is it for? The strategy can be used by the parties to the Convention as a guide in setting their national priorities and developing programs and plans. How this is applicable to waterpipe tobacco use. If a country has serious issues with waterpipe tobacco use, or even the parties where waterpipe tobacco use just emerges and is spreading, they should use this opportunity to again reinforce the reference to waterpipe tobacco use in their tobacco control legislations, in their national action plans, in their tobacco control programs that is applicable in their jurisdiction. So the strategy calls for the parties to set the national priorities and develop their programs and plans in a way to ensure that all tobacco products are covered and the FCTC is applied to all tobacco products that are available on their markets. Second, the strategy establishes the basis for assessing the implementation of such programs and plans, and to assess the implementation of the strategy itself. So it establishes indicators and promotes the use of such indicators by the parties. So again, it's a very important decision which should be used by the parties, which provides us with specific opportunities to better address waterpipe tobacco use. And we have highlighted here a few examples of specific objectives of the global strategy that could be utilized and that could be applied to the case of water pipes. You see here the role of the Knowledge Hub, and we are so delighted to have the Knowledge Hub on water pipes established at the American University of Beirut, and with the leadership of Professor Zaatari and Rima, and in the team of the Knowledge Hub, they are ready to assist the parties to the convention to strengthen their water pipe tobacco control policies. And the global strategy to accelerate tobacco control provides us with another opportunity to strengthen this work. So next decision which I would like to highlight also has many references to water pipe tobacco use and the depiction of water pipe tobacco use in movies and in entertainment media in general. So due to the fact that this is so much applicable to water pipe tobacco use, in fact, it was parties from the region to which also Lebanon belongs, the Eastern Mediterranean, that sponsored this decision. And this is a very important one that could provide us, that establishes a process that could result in further guidance in addressing the use of water pipes in movies and entertainment media. What is particular about this decision? So the decision aims to facilitate full implementation of Article 13 of the Convention, which refers to advertising, promotion, and sponsorship, and specifically addresses cross-border forms of TAPS, tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. As movies that are produced in a particular country, they are shown in the televisions, in the cinemas, in another party. So movies themselves reflect a form of cross-border advertising if they have tobacco advertising, if they have depicted tobacco use, if they have depicted water pipe tobacco use in them. So this decision provides an opportunity for us to move forward towards stronger global regulations concerning cross-border tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship. And specifically, the Conference of the Parties decided to establish a working group that could come up with specific guidelines to address cross-border tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship, and depiction of tobacco in the entertainment media. You might recall that the Conference of the Parties has already adopted guidelines for the implementation of Article 5.3. And this new document that will be produced by the working group will need to be used in conjunction with the already existing guidelines. These new guidelines will not replace the old guidelines. It will just complement those guidelines. But again, specific references will need to be made to water pipe tobacco use in the document that will be produced by this working group. And it is very important that the working group will consist of 2 parties from each of the WHO regions, So the Eastern Mediterranean region will have the opportunity to designate 2 parties and 2 experts from those parties to represent the region in this working group, so that we can ensure that Waterpipe tobacco control policies, and specifically policies on tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship, will be reflected in this document. The next decision which I would like to highlight again goes back to implementation of Article 5.3 of the Convention, which Rima already described how this article has cross-cutting, let's say, impact in the implementation of all articles to the Convention, as the tobacco industry interferes with the development of all kinds of policies, not only those on packaging and labeling, not only those on tobacco advertising, promotion and sponsorship, not only those on tobacco taxation, but all of them that are included in the FCTC. So it is very important that Article 5.3 implementation is always kept high on the agenda of the Conference of the Parties. And this has happened this time as well. And the Conference of the Parties invited the Convention Secretariat and its partners to come up with stronger measures proposed on how to better implement Article 5.3 of the Convention. And we are also very lucky that we recently, in November 2017, established a knowledge hub for the implementation of Article 5.3. And that knowledge hub is hosted by Thammasat University in Bangkok, Thailand. So this knowledge hub could provide assistance to the parties to the Convention in strengthening their implementation of Article 5.3. And as I see that Waterpipe tobacco control has such an important component concerning Article 5.3. We have states' tobacco monopolies. We have tobacco companies that are partly owned by governments that produce Waterpipe tobacco. So it is very important that in the countries which have such state monopolies or companies that are partly owned by the government strengthen their implementation of Article 5.3. And this decision of the Conference of the Parties can be used to do so. The next area which I would like to present briefly is that the Conference of the Parties addressed the issue of tobacco control in complex emergency situations. And again, this was addressed upon a requirement by the Eastern Mediterranean region. And what the Conference of the Parties discussed that is very important, even in the case of complex emergency situations, that we should not forget of the achievements which the country has made in tobacco control. So to sustain and maintain the already existent gains in tobacco control, including the existing tobacco control acts, for which, to the extent possible, enforcement should still be ensured, to sustain the infrastructure for tobacco control, including the country's participation in Conference of the Parties processes or the processes led by the working groups established by the Conference of the Parties, to try to ensure cessation services, to still ensure awareness raising among different population groups, and to continue engaging with the health workforce to ensure that tobacco control laws are sustained and tobacco is not used in areas where it is banned. So emergencies reflect a complex environment in which we need to make all our efforts to sustain existing tobacco control policies. And Rima has already mentioned a lot about contents and emissions, contents of Waterpipe tobacco products and the emissions of that result of water pipe tobacco use. And indeed, these are so important components of comprehensive tobacco control policies that the Conference of the Parties addressed the issue again, and even established an expert group where, again, experts from the Eastern Mediterranean who have also expertise in water pipe tobacco use are welcome to participate. So this expert group should look into the implementation of Article 9 and 10 of the Convention and the utilization of the guidelines on Article 9 and 10 that were already adopted by the Conference of the Parties to strengthen the implementation. As we see in the Global Progress Report, that Articles 9 and 10 are only implemented in about half of the parties. So not all measures of Articles 9 and 10 are properly implemented by the parties. So we need to make an effort to ensure that also water pipe tobacco products are regulated in terms of their content. The content is regularly checked, and regulations also apply to the disclosure of the information of the content of water pipe tobacco products. And finally, I would like to say a few words about novel and emerging tobacco products. And we can even see water pipe tobacco use and an emerging form of tobacco use in many parts of the world. I was just reading a newspaper article this morning that water pipe tobacco use is spreading in Canada, where it was not traditionally used, and other forms of tobacco products are also spreading in all parts of the world, including novel tobacco products that include electronic cigarettes, heated tobacco products. So that is why it is important for the Conference of the Parties to keep an eye on the market developments concerning the new and emerging tobacco products. In fact, the world is facing a new epidemic for the electronic nicotine delivery systems and heated tobacco products, which is spreading among young people, and they are taking up nicotine use in the forms of new and emerging tobacco products. So it is very important that COP reminds parties to prevent the initiation of these tobacco products, to protect people from exposure to their emissions, and to extend smoke-free legislations to also cover these products, to prevent the use of health claims that might indicate that these products can be helpful in tobacco cessation, to apply measures concerning advertising, promotion, and sponsorship, regulate the contents of these products and disclose the contents and emissions of these products. And the Convention Secretariat was required, together with WHO, to monitor market developments on these areas. So I was only able to highlight a few decisions of the latest session of the Conference of the Parties that I picked and chosen to indicate that in many decisions of the Conference of the Parties, there is a reference to water pipe tobacco use. There are opportunities provided for stronger water pipe tobacco control provided by these decisions. And we have a water pipe knowledge hub, and we also have a knowledge hub on Article 5.3 that could help the parties, that could help us all in promoting research, in developing policies, in assisting with the implementation of policies, in monitoring the implementation of those policies, and finally, to ensure and to work together for a future without tobacco. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Tibor, and thank you, Dr. Rima. So we're going to take some questions now. We have 5 minutes for questions. Feel free to send us your comments in the tab on the right. We have Miriam who has raised her hand, and so Miriam, can you try you like to make a comment? Okay, does anyone else have any comment or question?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. That was a good presentation. Now, my question is on tobacco. Tobacco control is imperative to actually improve public health. But when you look at the tobacco industry, it is contributing positively on the economics, especially in developing countries. So what are some of the strategies, in terms of this situation where tobacco industry is contributing positively and whereby there are issues with public health? I don't know if you got my question correctly.
Dr. Tibor, would you like to answer that?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And in fact, this question comes up every single occasion when we promote FCTC implementation. And what I would like to respond is that indeed, tobacco industry is a legal industry. However, if you look at the economic impact of tobacco and tobacco use, the balance is not in favor of the tobacco industry, and whatever gains it makes to the particular country. Why is that? Because indeed there are some tax contributions of the tobacco products to the country's economy. However, on the other side of this balance, we have the many direct and indirect costs related to tobacco use, which far outweigh the incomes deriving from the tobacco sector. So we need to look at this question in a more comprehensive way. The other thing which I would like to highlight is that whenever someone quits smoking and no longer uses the products that are produced by the tobacco companies, they will use other services and products which also have tax impact, tax consequences, which the prices of which products also have a tax component. So the countries would again benefit from the fact that the users do no longer use tobacco products but use something else. And in addition to that, of course, non-smokers live longer. And as they live longer, they will be able to contribute to the state economy actively by working and also by consuming. They can contribute to the state economy in a much better way than whether they would have died from a tobacco-related disease in their most active, let's say, middle age. So Rima, please feel free to complement what I just said.
Thank you, Tibor. I think you covered it perfectly well. I mean, this is an argument that we often get, but absolutely, I mean, the indirect cost of tobacco use also has to be counted and accounted for when we're talking about contributing to the economy of the country. So I think you addressed it very well.
Okay, so we received a question now. So the question is, marijuana is recently legalized in Canada, and as we know, the banning of waterpipe tobacco smoking in public places is not well implemented. And I think we are facing a new way to promote the use of WTS as a way to deliver marijuana among youth. What are the plans of FCTC towards facing such a new emerging issue? And what are the recommendations that FCTC can deliver to all the parties in general in case they legalized marijuana?
Can I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
The FCTC is about tobacco control. It doesn't have any recommendations in case of marijuana. So this is where I would like to stop. But what I would like to mention that as tobacco is one of the most important risk factors of NCDs, the global health, let's say, policymakers are looking at the experience of FCTC to apply to other, let's say, NCD risk factors, and why not to other emerging threats. So FCTC provides such a comprehensive set of interventions that are, of course, required by its parties to be implemented in case of tobacco. But if you look at other risk factors like alcohol, the list of interventions is the same, so as in case of tobacco control. So FCTC and its experiences, its structure can be used as a template to develop policies in many other public health areas, and why not in the case of marijuana. But again, the FCTC refers to the control of tobacco products and doesn't have anything to do with marijuana.
Thank you, Huda, for your question. I just would like to add that I understand that legalization is recent, and perhaps one very important aspect to monitor in the ground now is the fact that the observation that you are saying that Waterpipe tobacco has been a way to deliver marijuana, was promoted as a way to deliver marijuana. So it's very important to monitor, you know, how those practices are being used by the commercial industry, by the hospitality sector, cafes and restaurants, and it could be interesting to evaluate how, in fact, the convention, or at least, I mean, public, you know, banning smoking and Waterpipe tobacco smoking in public places can be a way to understand how this legalization is actually being practically playing out in country levels. And I think with Canada legalizing marijuana, and I know there are some US states that actually have also started legalizing marijuana, so it will be interesting to see how other states and countries are dealing with this issue, because there might be much similarities and practices to learn from.
Okay. So I think we're done with the questions for today. Thank you so much, Dr. Rima and Dr. Tibor, for this great session. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to our presenters. You can use the email that you received a reminder on, and I will make sure to forward the questions to our presenters. Thank you for attending, and hope to see you on our next session.
Thank you for organizing it. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.